Professor Rekith's antennae twitched nervously as he observed the new human student through the classroom's observation window. Jin Lee had arrived 15 minutes early, but instead of preparing her tactical displays or reviewing battle formations, she was busy arranging various colorful Earth snacks on her desk. The professor had taught at the Galactic Military Academy for over 30 standard cycles, but this was his first encounter with a human student. The Academy's decision to accept students from Earth had been controversial. Humans were classified as Deathworlders. After all, their planet's high gravity, extreme weather, and dangerous wildlife had shaped them into remarkably resilient beings. As other students filed into the classroom, they gave Jin's desk a wide berth. The Centaurian student's bioluminescent patches pulsed with anxiety, while the Arcturian's protective scales bristled. Only a young Proximan named Kel dared to take the seat next to her. "Would you like some?" Jin offered a bright purple package to Kel, who recoiled slightly. "It's just grape-flavored candy, totally safe for most species." Professor Rakith entered the classroom, his forelegs clicking against the polished floor. "Welcome to Advanced Tactical Theory and Application. I am Professor Rakith." His compound eyes fixed on Jin, who was now unwrapping what appeared to be chocolate. "Cadet Lee, this is a formal military institution. Please put away your refreshments." Jin smiled apologetically, but made no move to store her snacks. "Sorry, Professor, but my species needs frequent caloric intake to maintain optimal function. It's in my medical file." The professor's antennae drooped slightly. She was technically correct. The Academy's medical office had issued special dispensation for human dietary requirements. Still, there was something unsettling about how casual she seemed about everything. "Very well. Let us begin with basic battle formations." The professor activated the holographic display, showing a standard defensive pattern. "Who can tell me the primary weakness in this formation?" Jin's hand shot up immediately, although she was still chewing something. After swallowing, she said, "The formation assumes all units move at the same speed and have the same reaction time. It doesn't account for species-specific advantages." The answer was correct, but her delivery, slouched in her chair, one leg tucked under her, made several instructors observing through the window cringe. "Correct," Professor Rakith acknowledged stiffly. "And how would you modify it?" Jin pulled up her own tactical display, manipulating the holographic units with quick, precise movements. If you place the faster units here and here, they can respond to flanking attempts while the stronger defensive units maintain the core position. It's kind of like in old Earth soccer games. You need your quick wingers supporting your solid center backs. The comparison to a primitive Earth sport made Professor Rakith's antennae twitch again, but he couldn't deny the effectiveness of her modification. The simulation numbers showed a 23% improvement in defensive capability. During the next hour, Jin continued to surprise everyone. She solved complex tactical scenarios while seemingly paying more attention to her snacks than the display. She quoted ancient Earth military leaders alongside modern galactic strategists, all while maintaining a relaxed posture that made the rigid Arcturian students look like they might faint. The breaking point came during a practical exercise. Students were tasked with commanding a small fleet against a simulated pirate force. While other students approached it with appropriate military discipline, Jin treated it like what she called a video game. "Boom! Did you see that drift maneuver?" she exclaimed after executing a particularly risky but effective flanking movement. "Just like power sliding in Mario Kart." Professor Rakith had no idea what a Mario Kart was, but Jin's unorthodox approach resulted in a perfect score, with minimal casualties and maximum efficiency. After class, Professor Rakith found himself in an emergency meeting with other faculty members. The holographic displays showed Jin's test results alongside recordings of her casual behavior. "This is unprecedented," declared Professor Nexus, her crystalline form shimming with concern. "The human's results are exemplary, but her attitude..." "Perhaps," suggested Professor Rakith, surprising himself, "we are witnessing something important here." Humans evolved on a planet where death could come at any moment. Maybe their ability to remain relaxed in the face of danger is not a weakness, but a strength. The meeting continued late into the night, but one thing was clear. He-Jin Lee was going to change the academy, whether they were ready for it or not. In her dormitory, He-Jin was oblivious to the stir she had caused. She sat cross-legged on her bed, analyzing battle formations while enjoying another chocolate bar. A message popped up on her display. She had been selected to lead the next week's tactical exercise. Cool. She mumbled around a mouthful of chocolate, already planning how to incorporate some strategies from her favorite strategy games. The Galactic Military Academy would never be the same, and that was probably a good thing. After all, if humans had learned anything from their harsh homeworld, it was that survival didn't always require rigid formality. Sometimes it just needed a relaxed mind, quick thinking, and maybe a snack or two to keep the energy up. Commander Verix watched from the simulation control room, his scaled fin crest twitching with increasing irritation. Below, He-Jin Lee was preparing for the advanced combat simulation in a way that made his military sensibilities scream in protest. Instead of performing the traditional pre-simulation meditation, she was arranging snacks on her control console and humming what she called an old gaming tune. "This is unacceptable," he muttered to Professor Raketh, who stood beside him. "How did she even qualify for this level? Her test scores are remarkable," Professor Raketh replied, his antennae moving thoughtfully. "Though her methods are unconventional." The simulation chamber was a massive spherical room with holographic projectors creating a perfect replica of space combat conditions. Today's test was the notorious 7th Fleet scenario, a simulation that less than 2% of cadets had ever completed successfully. He-Jin adjusted her control seat, opened a bag of crunchy snacks, and gave a thumbs up to the observation window. "Ready when you are." Commander Verix's fin crest fully extended in agitation. "Cadet Lee, this is a serious military exercise, not an entertainment session." "Oh, I know," He-Jin replied cheerfully through the comm. "But you know what they say, a relaxed pilot is an effective pilot." Before Verix could respond, the simulation began. The holographic space around He-Jin filled with enemy vessels, a swarm of pirate ships attacking a civilian convoy. Standard procedure called for forming a defensive perimeter around the civilians while calling for reinforcements. He-Jin took one look at the situation and did exactly none of that. Instead, she scattered her fleet in what appeared to be random directions, breaking every formation rule in the Academy's tactical manual. She piloted her command ship straight toward the largest concentration of enemy vessels, munching on snacks as she went. "What is she doing?" Verix hissed. "This is madness." But as they watched, a pattern emerged from the chaos. He-Jin's scattered ships were herding the pirates, using their seemingly random movements to force the enemy into increasingly tight clusters. Her command ship's reckless charge had drawn their attention, making them forget about the civilian ships entirely. "It's like a game of pool," He-Jin commented through the comm, crunching on another snack. "You know, when you bounce the balls off each other to get them where you want." Verix had no idea what pool was, but he couldn't deny the effectiveness of her strategy. The pirates were now completely out of position, their formations broken, their attack patterns disrupted. That's when He-Jin sprung her trap. Her scattered ships suddenly converged from all directions, catching the enemy in a complex crossfire. The pirates, bunched together thanks to her earlier maneuvers, had nowhere to escape. Simulation complete, the computer announced. New record established. All civilian ships saved. Enemy fleet neutralized. Minimal friendly casualties. He-Jin stretched in her seat and grabbed another snack. That was fun. Kind of reminded me of this old game called Asteroids. Commander Verix stormed into the simulation chamber, his scales practically vibrating with emotion. "Your approach lacks all discipline. You ignored every standard formation, every tactical doctrine. But it worked. He-Jin pointed out, offering him a snack which he ignored. Sometimes the best strategy is to be unpredictable. This isn't a game, Cadet Lee. In real combat. In real combat, she interrupted gently. The enemy expects us to follow standard doctrines. They plan for it. But humans learned something important on Earth. Sometimes chaos is the best strategy. Our predators expected patterns too, so we learned to be unpredictable. Professor Rekith, who had followed Verix into the chamber, spoke up. She has a point, Commander. The simulation's difficulty comes from the pirates anticipating standard military responses. By acting outside those parameters, Cadet Lee achieved something unprecedented. Verix's fin crest slowly lowered as he processed this. You're suggesting we should encourage this informality. Not exactly, He-Jin said, finishing her snack. But maybe we could find a balance between discipline and adaptability. After all, the galaxy's a pretty chaotic place. That evening, the Academy's tactical department was in an uproar. He-Jin's performance had shattered not just the simulation record, but many of their long-held beliefs about proper military conduct. Some instructors demanded she be disciplined for her unorthodox approach, while others wanted to study her methods. Meanwhile, He-Jin sat in her room, playing an ancient Earth game called Space Invaders, while making notes on how its patterns could apply to real space combat. A message popped up on her screen. She had been assigned to teach a special seminar on adaptive tactical thinking. She smiled, reaching for another snack. Maybe the Academy was ready to learn that victory didn't always wear a formal uniform. Sometimes it came wrapped in candy wrappers, carrying the lessons of 1,000 Earth games, and wearing a relaxed smile. After all, on a death world like Earth, those who survived weren't always the strongest or most disciplined. They were the ones who could adapt, who could think differently, who could stay calm and clear-headed even while breaking all the rules. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The examination hall of the Galactic Military Academy gleamed under soft blue lights as He-Jin faced the most challenging test of her academic career. The Theoretical Crisis Response Board, composed of 5 of the galaxy's most distinguished military minds, sat before her with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright disapproval. Professor Nexus, her crystalline form catching the light, projected the test scenario into the center of the room. The hologram showed the Regelian border crisis, a complex territorial dispute that had stumped military strategists for decades. As usual, He-Jin had a pack of candies ready on her podium. Your solution, Cadet Lee, Professor Nexus began, completely disregards standard diplomatic protocols. Please explain your reasoning. He-Jin popped a candy into her mouth, causing several board members to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Well, it's actually based on an ancient Earth game called chess, she said, earning confused looks from the examiners. You based your solution to a major galactic crisis on a game. Admiral Thex's tentacles curled in disbelief. Exactly. He-Jin brightened, pulling up a holographic chessboard alongside the crisis map. See, in chess, sometimes the best move isn't the most obvious one. The Regelian situation reminded me of what we call a fork in chess. She manipulated the crisis hologram, highlighting key positions. The Regelians have positioned their forces here and here, thinking they're threatening both trade routes. But just like in chess, when your opponent threatens 2 pieces, sometimes the best response isn't to defend either of them. The board members watched, fascinated despite themselves, as He-Jin overlaid chess patterns onto the strategic map. In chess, when faced with a fork, experienced players often counterattack instead of defending. My solution creates a third option that threatens something more valuable to the Regelians than what they're trying to take. Professor Nexus's crystalline structure flickered with interest. But your proposal to establish a humanitarian aid station in neutral space is like moving a knight to threaten checkmate. He-Jin finished, unwrapping another candy. The Regelians can't attack it without losing face with their allies. can't ignore it without losing public support, and can't maintain their current positions without looking like they're blocking aid to refugee zones. The board members exchanged glances. He-Jin's solution was unorthodox, but the strategic principles were sound. She had turned a military standoff into a public relations challenge that the Regelians couldn't win without backing down. This theory of yours, Admiral Thex ventured, it comes from a recreational activity. He-Jin nodded enthusiastically. Humans have been playing chess for thousands of years. We've learned that sometimes the best way to win isn't to overpower your opponent, but to change the nature of the conflict itself. She projected more chess examples, showing how simple game principles could apply to complex galactic politics. The board members found themselves drawn in by her unusual but logical approach. On Earth, she continued, munching thoughtfully, we learned that games aren't just entertainment. They're ways of understanding conflict, strategy, and human nature. Chess taught us that position is often more important than power, and that sometimes giving up something small can win you something bigger. Professor Nexus's crystal structure pulsed with thought. And you believe these game principles can be applied to real military situations? They already have been, He-Jin replied. Earth's military history is full of commanders who used chess principles in real battles. The game helped them understand things like controlling space, sacrificing pieces for position, and thinking several moves ahead. She brought up historical Earth battles alongside chess games, showing the parallels. The board members leaned forward, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. But most importantly, He-Jin added, chess taught us that every piece on the board matters. In my solution, we're not just moving military units, we're considering civilian ships, aid workers, and public opinion as pieces in the game. The examination room fell silent as the board considered her words. Finally, Professor Nexus spoke. Your approach is unconventional, Cadet Lee, but we cannot deny its potential effectiveness. He-Jin beamed, offering her candy pack to the board members. To everyone's surprise, Admiral Thex accepted one with a tentacle. The next day, news spread through the Academy that He-Jin had received the highest theory test scores in recent history. More surprisingly, the board had recommended her solution be forwarded to actual military planners dealing with the Regelian situation. In her room that evening, He-Jin set up a real chessboard, an antique she brought from Earth. As she moved the pieces, she smiled, thinking about how this ancient game might help shape the future of galactic peace. A message popped up on her screen. She was being asked to teach a special course on Earth strategic games and their military applications. She moved her knight to checkmate and reached for another candy. Sometimes the oldest lessons were the best ones, even if they came wrapped in play. After all, humans had learned long ago that understanding could come from the most unexpected places, even from small wooden pieces moved across a checkered board, or from a student who treated galactic warfare with the same relaxed approach as a friendly game of chess. The Galactic Military Academy's study room 7B had never been so lively. He-Jin's study group, which had started with just 3 alien students brave enough to join her, had grown to include 15 cadets from various species. Today, they welcomed their newest member, Jai-Ho Park, another human transfer student who had just arrived from Earth. Trust me, He-Jin told her confused alien classmates as Jai-Ho set up what he called a vintage gaming console in the study room. This will help us understand tactical response times better than any simulation. Kel, the young Proximan who had been the first to accept He-Jin's methods, watched curiously as the screen lit up with primitive Earth graphics. What is this Left 4 Dead you speak of? It's a classic zombie survival game, Jai-Ho explained, distributing controllers to the group. You have to work together, manage resources, and think fast under pressure. The alien students exchanged worried glances. Vedrix, an Arcturian cadet, raised his scaled hand. But tomorrow's tactical exam covers fleet formations in asteroid fields. How will fighting Earth's undead help with that? Heijin grinned while helping a tentacled Octarian student hold the controller properly. You'll see, sometimes the best way to learn is to stop trying so hard to learn. For the next hour, the study room echoed with shouts, laughs, and the occasional frustrated growl as the alien students learned to navigate the game. What started as chaos slowly evolved into something else. Teamwork. Kel, watch your left flank, Jeho called out. Vedric's perfect use of choke points back there. The alien students were surprised to find themselves naturally applying military principles they'd studied. The narrow corridors in the game became analogous to asteroid field channels. Resource management in the game translated directly to fuel and ammunition considerations in space combat. This is surprisingly effective, admitted Professor Rakith, who had come to investigate the unusual noises and ended up watching from the doorway. They're implementing advanced tactical theories without even realizing it. Heijin nodded while helping a crystalline student adjust their grip on the controller. Games let us practice decision-making without the pressure of knowing we're being tested. Humans learned this long ago. Play is one of the best teachers. The next hour was dedicated to traditional study, but now the alien students approached their tactical problems differently. They were more relaxed, more willing to try unconventional solutions. See this asteroid cluster? Kel pointed at their tactical display. It's just like that building we defended in the game. We can use the same funnel strategy. Jeho had brought other games too. Strategy games, puzzle games, even simple racing games. Each one taught different lessons. Resource management, spatial awareness, quick decision-making under pressure. On Earth, Jeho explained during a break, sharing Earth snacks with his new friends. We learned that being too serious all the time actually hurts performance. Sometimes you need to relax to think clearly. The alien students were starting to understand. They noticed their simulation scores improving, their reaction times getting better. Even their traditional instructors couldn't deny the results. One day, during a particularly challenging fleet exercise, Vedrix found himself facing a surprise attack. Without thinking, he implemented a defensive pattern he'd used in one of the games. It worked perfectly. Did I just use a zombie survival strategy in a fleet battle? He asked, amazed. You sure did, Heijin said proudly. And that's exactly why we play these games. Word spread through the academy about the unusual study group. More students began showing up, curious about these Earth teaching methods. Even some instructors started dropping by, though they claimed it was just to monitor the sessions. The gaming breaks became legendary. Students would solve complex tactical problems, take a break to play games, then return to their studies with fresh perspectives and new ideas. It's like exercising different parts of your brain, Jeho explained to a curious professor. The games help us think flexibly, adapt quickly, and stay calm under pressure. Heijin and Jeho's study group soon became the highest performing tactical unit in the academy. Their test scores were unprecedented, their simulation performances revolutionary. Perhaps, said Professor Nexus during a faculty meeting, we should consider incorporating some of these Earth teaching methods into our official curriculum. The suggestion would have been unthinkable just months ago, but the results were undeniable. The human approach, combining serious study with playful learning, was proving remarkably effective. In Study Room 7B, another gaming session was wrapping up. The students were energized, happy, and, most importantly, thinking in new ways about their tactical challenges. Ready to tackle that fleet formation problem now? Heijin asked the group. Actually, said Kel, I think I solved it while we were playing. That level with the bridge defense gave me an idea. And so the cultural clash became a cultural blend, as the galaxy's future military leaders learned that sometimes the best way to understand warfare was to stop treating it so seriously all the time. After all, as the humans kept saying, the best strategies often come when you're just playing around. The emergency sirens at the Galactic Military Academy blared through the peaceful afternoon. turning the sky an ominous shade of red. Hejin was in the middle of explaining tower defense game strategies to her study group when the announcement came. A Crixus battle fleet had been detected entering the Centauri sector. "This is not a drill," the Academy's AI announced. "All senior cadets report to emergency stations." While other students rushed to their positions in panic, Hejin calmly opened another bag of chips. Jiho sat beside her at the tactical control station, pulling up the sector map while unwrapping a chocolate bar. "Look at their formation," Hejin said, pointing at the advancing red dots with a chip. "Reminds me of that last level in Galaxy Defense Ultra." Professor Rakith burst into the tactical room, his antennae twitching wildly. "Cadets, this is a real crisis. The Crixus fleet has broken through our outer defense line." "We see it, Professor," Jiho replied, studying the map while taking a bite of chocolate. "Their pattern is actually pretty predictable. Like NPCs in a game, they always take the most direct route." The professor was about to scold them for their casual attitude when Hejin started moving defense units on the tactical display. Her movements were quick and precise, placing ships in what seemed like random positions throughout the sector. "What are you doing?" Professor Rakith demanded. "Standard protocol requires." "Standard protocol is exactly what they're expecting," Hejin interrupted, still munching on chips. "Jiho, remember that trick we used in level 47? The one with the resource nodes?" Jiho nodded, already adjusting the positions of their support ships. "Split their forces by presenting multiple high-value targets. Classic tower defense strategy." More faculty members rushed into the room, including Commander Varix, whose fin crest was fully extended in alarm. They watched in horror as the two human cadets rearranged the entire sector's defenses while casually sharing snacks. "The civilian stations," Commander Varix began, "are safer now than they would be under standard protection protocols," Jiho assured him. "Watch." The Crixus fleet approached their first line of defense. Instead of finding the expected military formation, they encountered what appeared to be vulnerable supply ships. The Crixus commanders, following their tactical programming, split their forces to attack these seemingly easy targets. "And now," Hejin said with a grin, "the tower defense part begins." As the Crixus ships moved to attack, they found themselves caught in carefully planned crossfires. Each vulnerable target was actually bait, leading them into kill zones covered by hidden defensive positions. "Just like level 50, Jiho commented, adjusting some ship positions, "except they can't restart when they lose." The alien faculty watched in amazement as the two humans coordinated their defense with almost casual ease. They called out gaming terms that made no sense to anyone else, but resulted in devastatingly effective tactical maneuvers. "Crowd control on Sector 7. Need more DPS in the upper quadrant. Watch out for that aggro range." Within hours, the Crixus fleet was in complete disarray. Their famous battle algorithms, designed to counter standard military tactics, were useless against strategies borrowed from Earth entertainment. "Final wave incoming," Hejin announced, reaching for her last chip. "Jiho, want to show them our special move?" Jiho grinned, typing commands rapidly. "The one from the bonus level. Perfect timing." The remaining Crixus ships, attempting to regroup, suddenly found themselves herded into what Hejin called a boss fight arena. The trap closed perfectly, and the Academy ships emerged victorious. As the all-clear signal sounded, the room erupted in cheers. Professor Rakith stared at the tactical display, his antennae twitching in disbelief. You defended the entire sector using strategies from a game. Games are just simplified versions of real conflicts," Hejin explained, crushing her empty chip bag. "Humans have been using them to learn strategy for thousands of years." Commander Varix's fin crest slowly relaxed as he reviewed the battle data. "The casualty numbers, they're the lowest I've ever seen for an engagement of this scale. That's because in tower defense games, you have to protect everything while managing limited resources," Jiho explained. You learn to be efficient. The Academy's Emergency Response Review Board met immediately after the crisis. They had to admit that the unorthodox human approach had achieved remarkable results. There was talk of incorporating Earth gaming principles into standard tactical training. Later that evening, He-Jin and Ji-Ho sat in their favorite study room, already teaching interested classmates the basics of tower defense games. The best part about learning strategy through games, He-Jin told them, sharing a new bag of chips, is that you can try crazy ideas without real consequences. Then when a real crisis comes, you've already practiced thinking outside the box. The Academy would never be quite the same after that day. Sometimes visitors would be surprised to find military cadets playing what looked like simple games, but no one could argue with the results. After all, the day had been saved not by rigid military doctrine, but by two humans who saw a deadly space battle as just another level to beat. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Crixus were probably still trying to figure out how they'd been defeated by tactics from something called Galaxy Defense Ultra. The emergency faculty meeting room buzzed with unusual energy as Dean Syleth's crystalline form sparkled under the soft light. The massive display screen showed footage from He-Jin's latest training session, where she was teaching what she called speedrunning techniques to a group of eager alien students. What exactly are we watching? Professor Nexus asked, her own crystalline structure flickering with confusion. According to Cadet Lee, Dean Syleth explained, speedrunning is the art of completing objectives in the shortest possible time by exploiting every available advantage, even ones that might seem improper. On the screen, He-Jin was demonstrating how to skip entire sections of a standard combat course by using what she called physics exploits. Her alien students watched in amazement as she completed a 15-minute course in under 3 minutes. This is completely unorthodox, Commander Varix protested, his fin crest rippling. She's not following any of the established protocols. And yet, Professor Rakith pointed out, her methods are producing remarkable results. The screen switched to showing test scores. He-Jin's study group was outperforming every other class in the Academy's history, not just in speed, but in efficiency and adaptation to unexpected situations. Ji-Ho Park appeared in the next recording, explaining to a confused group of Arcturian students how to sequence break their way through a defensive scenario. Sometimes the intended path isn't the best path, he was saying while sharing Earth snacks with his classmates. The most concerning part, Dean Syleth continued, is that these methods work. They shouldn't, by any reasonable military doctrine, but they do. The faculty watched as He-Jin students began applying speedrunning concepts to traditional military exercises. Vedrix, an Arcturian cadet who had once been the most rigid follower of protocol, now moved through combat simulations with almost human-like spontaneity. Look at their response times, Professor Rakith noted, his antennae twitching with excitement. They're not just faster, they're thinking differently. Another recording showed He-Jin explaining something called frame-perfect timing to a group of Centaurian cadets. In speedrunning, she said while demonstrating on a simulator, every fraction of a second matters. You have to know exactly when to act. The alien students were adapting these concepts with surprising enthusiasm. Even the traditionally methodical Proximan students were learning to find what He-Jin called sequence breaks in standard military procedures. Perhaps, Dean Syleth admitted, watching a group of students complete a notorious obstacle course in record time, we should consider that the human approach has merit. The faculty discussion that followed was intense. Some argued for maintaining traditional methods, while others pointed to the undeniable results of He-Jin's teaching. They're not just breaking rules, Professor Rakith observed. They're understanding why the rules exist and when they can be safely ignored for better results. A new recording showed Ji-Ho teaching what he called routing strategies, planning the optimal path through any challenge. His students were learning to see possibilities that traditional military training would have forbidden them from even considering. It's like they've stopped seeing obstacles as barriers, Commander Varix admitted reluctantly and started seeing them as puzzles to be solved. The meeting room fell silent as they watched He-Jin's latest training session. She was teaching advanced speedrunning concepts now. Terms like clipping, sequence breaking, and routing optimization that sounded more like gaming jargon than military terminology. The most remarkable thing, Dean Syleth noted, is how they maintain discipline despite this unorthodox approach. They're not becoming reckless. They're becoming more precise. The evidence was clear in the combat simulation results. He-Jin's students weren't just faster. They were more efficient, more adaptable, and most importantly, more successful at protecting civilian assets during their missions. Time for a decision, Dean Syleth announced. Do we formally incorporate these human teaching methods into our curriculum? The vote that followed wasn't even close. The results spoke for themselves. The Academy would begin integrating speedrunning principles into its standard training program. Later that day, He-Jin and Ji-Ho received official appointments as special tactical instructors. Their first task, developing a curriculum that could teach other instructors how to understand and apply Earth gaming concepts to military training. Just wait until we show them about achievement hunting, He-Jin said to Ji-Ho as they planned their first instructor training session. One thing at a time, Ji-Ho laughed, sharing his last chocolate bar. Let's not terrify them too much at once. In the training halls of the Academy, a new era had begun. Traditional military precision was meeting human creativity, and the results were revolutionizing galactic warfare strategy. Students who once memorized rigid protocols now learned to see every situation as a potential speedrun, every obstacle as a chance for optimization. And somewhere in his office, Dean Syleth watched the latest training videos, his crystalline form glowing with what might have been pride. The humans hadn't just changed their tactics, they'd changed how the galaxy thought about warfare itself. Perhaps, he reflected, that was exactly what they had needed all along. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Military Academy sparkled with ceremonial lights as thousands of graduates from across the galaxy gathered for the most unusual graduation ceremony in the institution's history. At the center of attention stood He-Jin Lee and Ji-Ho Park, the two human students who had transformed the Academy's entire approach to military education. Dean Syleth's crystalline form glowed with pride as he addressed the assembled graduates, faculty, and distinguished guests. Today marks not just the graduation of another class, but the beginning of a new era in military education. He-Jin, characteristically relaxed, had a small bag of Earth candies hidden in her ceremonial uniform pocket. Ji-Ho kept glancing at her with an amused expression, knowing exactly what she had stashed away. The massive holographic displays above showed highlights from their revolutionary training programs. Alien students learning Earth gaming strategies, record-breaking simulation scores, and most importantly, the successful defense of the Centauri sector using their unorthodox methods. When these two humans first arrived, Commander Varix spoke next, his fin crest moving gently. I thought their casual approach would be the death of military discipline. I have never been more pleased to be proven wrong. The assembled aliens laughed, remembering how He-Jin had once explained complex battle strategies while eating snacks, or how Ji-Ho had taught advanced tactical maneuvers using what he called speedrun strats. Professor Raketh stepped forward, his antennae twitching with emotion. Their greatest achievement wasn't just improving our tactical capabilities. It was teaching us that effectiveness doesn't always wear a formal uniform. The screen showed more footage. Arcturian students learning to sequence break through combat scenarios, Proximans applying tower defense strategies to fleet formations, and Centaurians mastering what He-Jin called frame-perfect timing in their maneuvers. The results speak for themselves, Dean Syleth continued. This graduating class has the highest tactical scores in Academy history. More importantly, they have shown unprecedented creativity in problem-solving. He-Jin and Ji-Ho exchanged glances as their former study group members beamed with pride. Kel, the Proximan who had first trusted their methods, had graduated top of his class. Vedrix, once the most rigid traditionalist, had developed entirely new tactical approaches combining classic military doctrine with Earth gaming principles. Therefore, Dean Syleth announced, his crystalline form pulsing with bright colors, the Academy Council has unanimously voted to formally adopt the Human Adaptive Tactical Training Program as part of our standard curriculum. The hall erupted in cheers. Even the most traditional instructors had to admit that the human approach had proven its worth, especially after the Crixus incident. Furthermore, the dean continued once the excitement died down. We are proud to announce our new Academy motto, "Victory needs no formality." The words appeared in glowing script above the hall, written in every major galactic language. Hejin finally couldn't resist and pulled out a candy, earning chuckles from nearby graduates who had grown used to her habits. To our graduating class, Commander Verix announced, "You have learned something invaluable. That true strength lies not in rigid adherence to tradition, but in the ability to adapt, to think creatively, and yes, sometimes to treat serious matters with a light heart." The ceremony continued with the presentation of diplomas and honors. Hejin and Jiho received special commendations for their contributions to military education, along with appointments as permanent tactical advisors to the Academy. After the main ceremony, during the celebration, aliens from across the galaxy approached the two humans to share stories about how their methods had changed everything. "Remember when you taught us about achievement hunting in combat simulations?" Kel asked, his bioluminescent patches glowing with joy. Or that time Hejin explained fleet formations using something called StarCraft build orders. Vedrix added, his scales shimmering with amusement. The celebration continued late into the night, with graduates demonstrating their favorite speedrun strats on the Academy's training courses. The faculty watched with a mixture of horror and admiration as their students casually broke every traditional rule while achieving perfect mission scores. In a quiet moment, Hejin and Jiho stood on the Academy's observation deck, watching the stars and sharing their last bag of Earth snacks. "Think we changed too much?" Jiho asked, looking at the new motto glowing above the main entrance. "Nah," Hejin replied, offering him a candy. "We just help them see that being effective doesn't always mean being serious." Below them, new students were already arriving, eager to learn about this revolutionary human approach to military training. They would learn traditional disciplines, but also how to think like speedrunners, how to see battlefield tactics through the lens of tower defense games, and most importantly, how to stay relaxed under pressure. The Galactic Military Academy would never be the same, and that was exactly what the galaxy needed. In a universe full of rigid traditions and formal protocols, sometimes the best strategy was to remember that victory could come with a smile, a snack, and a completely unexpected approach to solving problems. The new motto glowed in the night, "Victory needs no formality." And somewhere in the celebration below, another group of students was probably learning about something called rocket jumping while their instructors watched in terrified fascination. The future of galactic warfare had changed forever, and it all started with two humans who dared to treat military training like their favorite games.